Welcome to a very special episode of the Comic Book Wars podcast. I'm your host, Nico, with comicbookspeculation.com, and I want to give a special thanks to our very special guest, TiVo, the Lord of the Longbox. TiVo, would you talk to our live audience a little bit about the Lords of the Longbox podcast, how it began, when you got involved with YouTube and so forth?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Nico. Lords of the Longbox has been around. I started on YouTube probably about 2015. I started on Instagram showing comic books right around 2012, 2013. Like we're like the old school, Instagram dudes. And then on 2015, I started following cats on YouTube. I was like, man, cats are doing comic book hauls, man. I think guys like Lightning 2288, Omega Shin Ryukin, the Great Legend, Jane Guy 1 were cats that I followed. And then I started doing videos, and then I started growing that community with comic book fanatics, with the NY Warriors, and eventually the Comic Corps. And then I started right around 2016. I started our live show that turned into our podcast called Lords of the Longbox Live. And basically what we did was we talked about comic books, and more importantly, what comic book movies and TV shows and how they affect the comic book market. Because there was tons of live YouTube shows at the time, but we had noticed that what really moves the market now was speculation from movies and TV. I mean, really, right? I mean, weekly spec wasn't our thing. We tried to do long-term spec. So we got a good following, a lot of followers. At one point, we're growing pretty well. We had a good live show, built great friends and community. Me and my man Darkside Jedi started it. We started with a couple other cats. And then we brought on my man Nemesis Prime and Otto from the Grotto. We had a 4-man crew. Now we brought in the Great Manimal, used to be with Gem Mint Collectibles. And we've been consistently inconsistent doing our live show since about 2016. Growing, Lords of Longbox and IG Comic Lords. There's a Lords of Longbox Facebook page. There's a Lords Comic Investing group that other people have created. What really kind of put us on the map was probably 6 or 7 months ago. My show was seen by somebody who found out my channel through Comic Tom 101 actually, and he could reach out to me because on that particular show I'd said, look, man, I'm pretty sure there is a secret group or cabal of collectors out there that are privy to inside information, and that's why you see books just jump up for no reason at all. Sure enough, this guy reached out to me. He says, you're right, I am part of that group. Somebody sends you a secret message saying, hey man, I'm part of a secret cabal that is privy to insider information. You're just like, yeah, whatever. And then he says, no, for real. And I said, okay. So he sends me screenshots of a Facebook private group he's in with date stamps of when, they talked about when Marvel was going to buy Fox back in 2015. I was like, holy shit. So I was like, hey, let's run with this. So he remained anonymous, and that to this day, that source is who we call the Black Knight. And then a few months later, within the same group of kind of guy insiders that have information with Marvel and DC, and to a lesser extent, Lucas or Star Wars, I met Mikey Sutton, who's another source of ours that's been giving us inside information. And basically what we've been doing is on our live show every week, we try to do it every week, or if we come in with breaking news, we try to give, what I say was we give the collectors an even playing field, so that when the information drops like this, you don't have to be signed on to somebody's Patreon or pay for an app or pay for a website. We just give you the information for free because we're fellow collectors. So, most recently, last Wednesday, I dropped that Clea and Brother Voodoo are coming to Disney Plus. I mean, that's the latest scoop that we did. And I still collect comics, so it's not like I just do this, just spec. Sometimes, I get the information, but I don't try to capitalize off it. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't see me do a show and then the next day I'm like selling like 10 copies of it. You know what I mean? So, but it's good because, I used to tell people, look, man, it just makes things collecting more fun. If you go to a show, you can dig for relatively obscure titles. And if it's $3 or $4, if it pops, it pops. If not, it's nothing. It's not that much of an investment. It's not like you're dropping $1,000 speculating or something like that. That's when it's no longer fun. And that's when you got a gambling problem.
Yeah. Do you like, how I put the small poster over the random box I talked about? I have this weird box in the background.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about that, right? You couldn't possibly go out and buy these books before you give the news out on Wednesdays or on your special live broadcasts or special broadcasts. It's too hard to report the news timely. I mean, you guys are on that literally within a matter of minutes after it breaks sometimes.
Yeah, you know what? Sometimes it's better to rush to be correct as opposed to rush to be first. You know what I'm saying? So typically, and I do it like weekly, but if it's huge news, like we broke the story about Sony and Marvel coming to a deal for Spider-Man, and I was posting that on a daily basis. I was like, look, this is happening. I also have something called a long-term spec list, which is a reserve list that we get from our insiders that say, look, all we know is Feige has put a hold on these characters, meaning that hey, we don't know when he's going to do it, but he's saying, because typically what they have to do is say at Disney or Marvel, if Kevin Feige wants to use something for film, he puts a reserve on it. The meaning, prior to, I guess, Feige being head of it all, let's say Loeb wanted to use it for TV. If Feige has a hold on it, they can't. So we had a long-term spec list. And typically when the characters end up on the spec list, that means they're going to be used for some type of film or show, not necessarily meaning their own show. You know what I'm saying? So if Brother Voodoo gets a long-term hold put on it, that means like, hey, he's going to be appearing on either Doctor Strange or a Disney Plus show. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be getting their own intellectual property or tentpole franchise. You know what I mean? Something like that. So, and typically we've been pretty good with this. Some of our receipts. Unfortunately, my podcast is still around, but the old channel's gone. It was terminated by YouTube back in July. But if you we had 6,000 subs at the time it got terminated, and we were growing really fast. So it kind of sucked that we had to reboot. But if you go on to like SoundCloud or iTunes or Stitcher, you can see it's funny. Our podcast goes back to like 2018, 2017, all the old shows. So, luckily I was able to save some of the audio. So, hey, shout out to Pops Foster and Matt Forge, man. Those are two guys that are on our Lord's Comic Investing Facebook page.
Do you think you got nuked because you were giving out information too early on YouTube?
It is weird, man. I never got a reason why. I appealed. I got super generic. Just hey, but you violated the terms of service, and that was it.
Let's talk about some of the things you were first with. Right, you were first with She-Hulk when no one in their right mind was talking about that character being anywhere. It was well understood, and I was dead wrong that Universal had the rights tied up. You guys were the only channel that I'm aware of that was reporting that, and you were reporting it early and often.
Yeah. Another one that's I'm really proud of was before any of like the YouTube or Twitter scoopers talked about it was the Moon Knight stuff. We heard Moon Knight was coming. We didn't know that Kevin Feige grabbed it and moved it over to Disney Plus because at the time, Marvel wasn't sure of what's going to happen with Spider-Man. So they needed to make an announcement. So if you remember D23, they pushed Moon Knight and they put it onto the Disney Plus schedule. But what we got early, when a lot of our followers know this, is that we got the villains of Moon Knight. Stained Glass Scarlet was something we broke way back in, I think, July. And Bushman were some of the early ones that we came out in the forefront, and nobody had heard of Stained Glass Scarlet prior to that. And then now people were starting to buy it up, and we were speccing heavy on the Marvel horror stuff. And it still hasn't come true, but we're still hearing that it's still going to happen. I mean, even though Marvel TV is gone per se, it's not really folded. It's just under Kevin Feige now. So Man-Thing is coming. Originally, it was supposed to be on Hulu, right? So they wanted to build off, what were they calling it? The Tales of, what was it called? Spirits of Vengeance and all those. So they wanted to build, and originally Ghost Rider was coming out right there. Well, originally Blade was supposed to be on Hulu, but then Mahershala Ali called up Kevin Feige and said, yo, I want to play Blade. So two-time Oscar winner calls you and says he wants to play Blade. You make him Blade and you put him in the MCU, right?
You guys were on Blade early.
Yeah.
Real early.
And Nova
earlier
too.
than almost anyone, maybe earlier than anyone.
Yeah, we pushed Nova really early too, as well as Frankie Ray, which is just blown up recently. But we talked about that back in September, we talked about Frankie Ray is going to be the first Herald of Galactus in the MCU. Well, after Silver Surfer. So basically, they're going to do the John Byrne storyline from FF 242 to 244, where basically Galactus comes to Earth. Frankie Ray gives up her powers or gives up herself to become the Herald of Galactus and save Earth. That storyline, and she's going to be the girlfriend of Johnny Storm, obviously.
Woo. Big news. Now,
there's a lot of it, dude. It's hard for me to keep track.
Yeah. So let's talk about this, right? Because a lot of our stories, at least the spec tips or news tips, really that you get, that I get. I thought we had one of the same sources, and apparently we don't. But I know a lot of the same. Yeah, and right, small community. But a lot of the information is exactly the same. And more, it's not that I think that this that like the spec tips that don't pan out were somehow false or misleading. I just think this stuff was discussed, and then they decided to go a different direction.
Yeah, and you know what? I think it's up to us as collectors to know what to look for, right? Because
the tips aren't the only thing that you rely upon. Obviously.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah. So recently, my source, Mikey Sutton, had told me that Marvel is really pushing to bring back Hugh Jackman one last time to play Wolverine. Because him and Ryan Reynolds have been flirting with each other online. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time of when. Now with like time travel and different alternate realities, I think they could bring back an old version of Wolverine for one last movie with Deadpool, and then it's that Wolverine book that's the first appearance of Deadpool and Wolverine. It's kind of been hot for a while, but as soon as this announcement gets made, it's going to jump through the roof. So that's kind of things that as collectors, we kind of have to navigate the minefield of, okay, well, just because they do this, what issue is it going to be? Like recently, we were speccing some Justice Society stuff with the Black Adam news, and we talking about, man, a lot of these golden age nobody's specking a $10,000, but that's not a spec anymore. That's a blue chip, right? So then he's like, well, wait a second. There's like bronze and silver age versions of these that we can run with. A lot of times we find out DC and Marvel, they like to use the more modern versions of these characters because, the golden age ones are kind of, they're kind of that oldie kind of comic book feel to them and not modern enough for them to put on a big screen.
Yeah, I like the first modern Hawk Girl, for example.
Yeah. Just like if you think about like Legion of Superheroes, right? Some of their names are kind of wonky, right? It's just kind of out there the way they describe things. But then if you look at the way Titans have kind of modernized things, and pretty much everything in the MCU is like almost an Ultimates version of it, if you think about it. And that's why people about it. Yeah, and that's why people were specking Ultimate Taskmaster for a while. When everybody bought up, first appearance of Taskmaster in Avengers, then they're like, well, what's a second book can get? So I think a lot of this times is the first book is so hot, it gets overpriced, and people are like, well, let me get the second one. Or let me get the second appearance. Or Hulk 180 versus 181, which I think 181 is still the first appearance. But anyway.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I'll trade 180s for 181s whenever anybody wants to.
Yeah. Hey, it's whatever the market decides is what I say. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter.
Amen.
You and I have been on the CGC boards before. It's whatever the CGC boards kind of decides, whatever the market decides, that's what it is.
Yeah, so let's talk about your background. You have obviously been on the CGC boards. And we talked a little bit before the podcast started. You got into comics in the 1980s. We're at your first comic store in 1980.
81, 82.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm 48 now. So I first started reading comics in like the 70s, and that was like Amazing Spider-Man and X-Men. Because I remember my uncle used to like read them and then hand them to me, and I just like, I was like a first and second grade, just kind of like, half reading, half looking at the pictures. And I remember right around like fourth or fifth grade, I was mentored by a collector who was in high school already. But he's the one that taught me how to collect comics. At that point, I was just reading comics. But he told me, no, what you want to do is anytime you see a first appearance or a first issue, those are the ones you want to go after, right? That's the first time I'd seen an Amazing Fantasy 15 in person. He goes, this is the first appearance of Spider-Man. I was like, yeah, big deal. And then a few years later, I was like, holy shit, I was looking at Amazing Fantasy 15, right? So, and I remember at that, like 81, going into a comic shop, 82, and I remember the wall book that I wanted the most was What If #1. Right? It seems like such a weird thing, right? But I remember to this day looking at What If, like, oh man, I want that so bad. And I remember like I was going to 7-Eleven, I was buying comics. There was a my bus that took me to school in elementary, the bus stop was just the yellow bus, right? The long yellow bus, not the short bus. But it was right in front of a 7-Eleven. So we would go like 30 minutes before, and there was a video. This was back when every 7-Eleven had video games. We pay video games, and then we'd get comics, and they were right. I remember the first comic I bought off the rack with my own money was, I think, Uncanny X-Men 170 or 171. That was like the first one. And then I remember walking into a comic shop with like $10, and I was thinking, man, everything is so massive in here. And that's when I was like, there's a whole new world to this. This is comic book collecting. This isn't comic book reading, right? This is, knowing there's like thousands of comics in here. What do I get? And that's when, having a mentor at such a young age, I knew to look for first appearances and first issues. So that's what the collectors would get, and start from there. And then the first run I ever got was, he turned me on to John Byrne and Fantastic Four. So the first run I completed was the John Byrne run from Fantastic Four 232 up to like 282. That was like, I said, I have to go out and get this. I'm hooked. John Byrne was my man. And then when he came out with Alpha Flight after that, I was like totally blown. Then I found out he did X-Men from 10 years before that. And then I went and got those. And then in the 90s is when I really went overboard. And that's, I remember in the 90s, my I guess my white whale was Witchblade #1. I drove around the Bay Area at every shop looking for Witchblade #1, and I went to 20 different shops, and I can only get 3 of them. But that was when it was the hot book, right? Michael Turner, Witchblade. If you read all like the Wizard magazines, it was always in like the top, 10. Remember the Wizard? The Wizard magazine would help you tell you that was like a pre-internet speculation, was the Wizard magazine.
Now, were you reading Comic Buyer's Guide and Comic Scene, or was Wizard the first secondary source, or did you kind of tool around with Overstreet? Or
Overstreet to me was too old. I thought, Quarterly didn't come out soon enough for me. Wizard magazine was, and then the Comic Buyer's Guide was that the free little pamphlet, right?
No, they cost money. That was but Comic Buyer's Guide sort of preceded Wizard.
Yeah,
but it didn't have the pictures, didn't have the articles, at least not the color glossy stock.
Because what I liked about the Wizard magazine, which was hard to find back then, like you said with Overstreet, was it had a price guide in it.
Right.
So having a price guide really helped me. And then the Wizard magazine, and you know what what I used to use as a price guide before Wizard and everything, was the Mile High Comics guy ad that came out in the Bronze Age. In the comics, remember it showed like one page, and I remember, and you would have prices, and that was literally my price guide. And I'd always look at like, wow, why is this Hulk 181? Look at that, it's $300. That's ridiculous. Now it's like, Hulk 181 is like, $2-3 grand. But it was funny. Mile High was my comic guide, and the ironic thing is, I wouldn't buy anything with Mile High nowadays.
We talked about at least in the infancy of our comic collecting, sending checks.
Yep.
Writing out lists of books we wanted and mailing them away.
That was eBay before you kids got lucky with PayPal. So right around like I really started buying. I can remember this too, on eBay, because this is when I moved down to Orange County in '99. Is when I really started going deep into eBay. And I remember at that time, Ultimates was really hot. I mean, when I meant Ultimate, like Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate X-Men, those books were super hot. And I remember buying the first appearance of Swamp Thing through the mail on eBay. And I had to mail a money order or check. And then the buyer would say, hey, I received your money order, check. Let's just make sure it because sometimes people thought that money orders could be faked. So they would go, let me cash this money order, make sure it's legit, and then I'll mail you out your book. You didn't get any tracking numbers. You didn't get anything. And one time, he sent my Swamp Thing. It was a House of Mystery 82, right?
92.
Yeah, so 92. And the fucking mailman folded it in half and shoved it in my mailbox. Because, people didn't have mailers back then. People didn't use cardboard backings half the time.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
If I didn't have a subscription increase in it, I did now, man. So I remember opening my mailbox and go, oh my God, what is this? Are you kidding me? And then I remember, because in 99, 2000, that was when I first started grading my books. So I sent that off, Hulk 181, Giant Size, and X-Men 94. And I remember that House of Secrets 92 came back as a 6.5. I remember my first grades to this very day. My Hulk 181 came back 9.0, Uncanny X-Men came back an 8.0, and Giant Size came back at 8.5. And then I sold them on 2004, 2005. But this was back like the infancy of CGC. You just mail it off and hopefully you get back a slab in like, 4 or 5 months.
When was the first time you sent a book to CGC, if you can remember?
It was right around 2000. It was the first time I sent a book off to CGC because I didn't know what it was, to be honest with you. I mean, this is internet's, infancy. And, then I found out, and when I started,
I think those are red labels, aren't they?
The first generation is red label. I'd never had a red label. I had the blue label.
You had you had blue labels?
The old blue label. Yeah.
Old blue. I didn't know if 2000 was like original red.
No, it was when I got mine, they were blue labels. And I remember the grade remember the font is like tiny on them, not like nowadays. It was ridiculous how small the font was. But
and then you took a break, right?
I sold off everything. Everything. The only thing I kept is I have my largest run of comics is my X-Men run. And I have like 300 issues of Silver Age up to like modern of X-Men, complete from Giant Size to 142 for sure. Is the expensive run of Giant Size, Uncanny 94 up to 142. I have like Silver Age like 10 through like 50, 60, and then a lot of scatter altogether like 300. But I kept that, but I pretty much sold everything else, including my Hope 181 and everything. And then right around, because I thought things were starting to get stale, which where they were right around 2004, 2005, right? And I think what got me back into collecting again was a little black and white comic called The Walking Dead. People are telling me, "Yo, this book is crazy." I said, "What is The Walking Dead?" It's a zombie. I don't care about no zombie comics. Well, it's really hot right now, and guess what? It's going to be made a TV show. I go, what? So I literally
you got it for the TV show.
Yeah. So I actually illegally downloaded the first 50 issues through back then, Pirate Bay or whatever. And I was hooked. I could not stop reading The Walking Dead. And then I started going back into my LCS and it was just all over. I was spending like $50 to $100 a week. A week. It was getting nuts. I mean, I was buying up. At one point I went to my LCS and go, look, every first issue that comes out, just pull aside to me, put it as my pull list. And it got to a point where I was pulling every Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse, anything that came out. I was like, give it to me. And then I came to a point where I was like, dude, there's like 50 books here. Because
the height of Wednesday warriordom.
Yes. And it was getting out of control because I was like, and then he goes, well, you can't do that. And I was like, well, shit, I didn't know about, looking things up. I was just saying, because I had the, what do they call it now? FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. I didn't want to miss out. I remember like Morning Glories #1 came out.
Absolutely. I just picked up a run for free from someone.
Oh man, those when they first came out, Nick Spencer was a hot book. They thought it was gonna be the next Walking Dead. And I remember my LCS in Lake Forest still had like 20 copies on the shelf. For some reason, nobody at this shop knew about it. I went in there, I picked up a stack of 15. I go, here, they go, you can only buy 3 at a time. I go, what? Shit. So I bought 3. I called my girlfriend up. I said, hey, can you come by here? And she goes, you're not making go to a comic shop with all these nerds? I go, yes. I go, pick up Morning Glories and give me 3 issues, but make sure they're the best copies, right? So I had her like sifting through it. So I ended up getting like 6 copies. And then and that's when I flipped them like 3 months later. And I remember I bought them for cover price and I sold them for like $40-$50 a pop. And that's when I kind of really got into speculating. And I was like, hey, I can, there's been a lot of hits. There's been a lot of misses, but for the most part, that's where I really got my comic flipping speculation tip right there. It started with Morning Glories on the modern versions.
I remember that was the time when I got back into comics. That exact time that you're talking about. Chew was the big book. It still has a place near and dear to my heart. It was at one point in time like neck and neck with The Walking Dead. I remember like brutal battles I had with people on the CGC boards just because, we were all fighting for a piece of a small pie.
I left the CGC boards because it's so tribal on there. It's just kind of crazy, man. It's like
a good word for it. Tribal is a good
it is, man. Especially if you're new to it. I came into the CGC boards a little bit later than most people. Like I came in like 2014, right?
You're years too late. They'll just ignore you from the
exactly. But I had built up enough friends and equity on Instagram and YouTube. People were defending me. like I would say something, somebody like, who is this newbie? And then like my buddy would like, hey man, that's my boy TiVo. He's cool. You know what I mean? And I was like, at that point, I was like, man, I can't imagine somebody who just coming into this brand new, who doesn't know people in the community already, man, they're just going to get, and I just felt at that point, I was like, you know what? I don't need the boards. And like, ETA Nick, right? YouTuber.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
ETA Nick has some horror stories he could tell you, because he's been on the CGC boards forever. And even he says, he doesn't even mess with it that much, because it's just, it's like internet forums of 2004. That's how like tribal and archaic they are, can be sometimes on the CGC forums.
No question about it. One of the things that I like best about the Lords of the Longbox is that you guys don't badmouth or naysay or like whatever, anything. I mean,
not overtly.
It is you go like, well, I don't know if you do it naturally or if it would be almost unnatural to me. You guys are so good at it. I would have to work really hard to do it, and I think I do it okay. But you really do a hell of a job of just promoting things that you love, that you enjoy, that you believe in, as opposed to bad mouthing everyone and everything and pointing fingers and laying blame.
Yeah. It didn't always used to be like that, Mike. But then I learned, a few years ago, man, just accentuate the positive, because it's just when people are so negative on social media, sometimes it's just draining. Like I can't watch another video of somebody bashing something. I said to myself, look, I'm only going to talk about the stuff I enjoy. There's enough people to talk about the stuff they don't enjoy. Why do I want to spend my time, participating in that? I want to celebrate the stuff that I really enjoy and let other people know about it so they can enjoy it too. Because there's enough people who, like, I rarely will do a bad review of a movie, right? But if I see a good movie and it, many people are talking about it, I'll do a review on it. But to just pile on to something, it's like Kevin Smith really put it the best. He goes, everybody thinks I love all movies he sees, and Kevin Smith goes, no. He goes, I only review the movies that I like though. If there's a movie I didn't like, I don't talk about it. It's like your mom said, if you have nothing good to say, don't say anything at all, right? And so,
amen.
YouTube was, 2015, 2016. There's always toxic environments of social media, right? And there's been pockets of it here. It gets to like being a high school sometimes, where people have their cliques. And I told a lot of people on YouTube, I was like, look, man, there could be different pockets of YouTube communities. We don't all have to be friends. You know what I mean? It's like high school. You can acknowledge one another, but you still have your crew, and other people have their groups. Not everybody has to get along, but it doesn't mean you have to bash each other either. You know what I mean? It's, people feel like if you're not talking about somebody that you're bashing them. It's like, no, they're doing their thing, we're doing our thing. And it's just, it's just the way it goes. Now YouTube is so big. On a given day, there could be 10 different live shows going on throughout the day. Right. My boy Discovery Bay Comics does a great job of kind of doing like a YouTube TV guide of shows. And I watch it and I'm like, man, there's like just on Wednesday when we go live, I was like, man, there are literally 12 different shows going on throughout the day. It's community's thriving right now, but I would say sometimes it's hard to get views because there's just so much out there, unless you're doing like, you're unboxing toys for little kids, or if you're fucking doing makeup tutorials, that's the only way to get 1 million views, right? If you think about the comic community, views are pretty damn small.
I can't remember if it was a meme or a TV show, but I remember someone poignantly observed that you could write the Declaration of Independence for the first time and publish it on Facebook and get 26 likes. But if you show some TNA, you'll get 2,000. It's just a tough crowd.
It is.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like, it's like anything though. I think if you got good, if you got a good personality, or if you have good production values and things like that, it'll come through. There's some guys that just,
I can't understand why people watch us, because we lack both.
Hey man, I'm gonna tell you right now, that Dinesh thing.
I'm speaking for Comic Book Wars, not you guys.
Well, I'm gonna tell you what, that Dinesh interview was great, and that's a hard one to follow, man. When he says he has 500,000 comics in his collection, and the funny thing is one of my guys who sells comics, and he has a booth here, is good friends with Dinesh, and he's been to Dinesh's house and he's shown his books on Instagram. Like, we're talking like the AF-15s and those books. So I know Dinesh has like a killer collection.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Let's talk about your collection. So you're not doing the Wednesday Warrioring anymore, I take it?
Very rarely. I mean, I stopped buying, well, at least like buying new comics. If I do, I buy them digitally and I'll read them that way. I found that I was buying new comics, and then one day I had a long box full of comics I hadn't read yet. And that's when I realized it's just a
I've
waste.
got so many, it's painful. The
Yeah.
only reason I buy new comics basically is to support my fledgling local comic shops.
Oh yeah. I mean,
You know
my
what I mean?
comics,
That's it. And I'd rather just dig through their boxes in the back, but frankly, I don't have time to do that. I just have to like run in and be like, "Oh, I'll take these," and
yeah,
leave in like 5 seconds.
my LCS is cracking on Wednesdays. I mean, there's a line of people waiting to get in before it opens.
It's beautiful.
And like you, I mean, I'll go and I'll buy like things that I want. Like if first issue comes out, Fantastic Four is my book, Silver Surfer, Thor, things like that. And if there's a good variant, I was like, hey, I want to get this variant. But what's cool about my LCS is, and I didn't know this was a lot of LCSs don't have this, is they have wall books and they have tons and tons of back issues. And that's what's the good part about it. Yeah. So anytime they have a sale, I go right up, pick out some wall books. I'll go dig in them long boxes, and I has one shop I used to go to when I started buying like Morning Glories, they had no back issues at all. And then when I went to this one by my house, I was like, man, this is awesome. Before the new owner took over, the old owner didn't take care of it. And it was cramped and there was shit all over the place. And I was overwhelmed. I was like, you know what? I can't do this. I don't know where everything is. My buddy, the Big To Do, took it over and he organized everything. And it was amazing is he started finding a bunch of stuff. Like he was finding like the What If Venom Possessed Deadpool. Remember that when that came out?
Yeah.
He found those just sitting in boxes. And that one, it was already like a $200 book raw at that point when he found them. So once he started organizing stuff, and then he started doing really good buys of back issues. I mean, he just posted on his Instagram today. He found a Strange Tales 169. He found a Marvel Fanfare #1, and I told him claim, and I was like, he goes, all right, because the thing about my LCS owner is he's a collector too, so he'll buy a collection, whatever is worthy of CGC, he'll send those away, and then whatever he says, okay, I'm gonna put these on the wall, and then at that point I'll be like, hey, well, can I get first dibs at them? You gotta. That's why I tell a lot of people, if you go to your LCS owner should know you by name. Right? Not just your face. He should know you by name. You should build up a good repertoire and friendship with your LCS owner so that you can call him and say, hey man, can you put this aside for me? And they will, you know what I mean? If your LCS owner shop doesn't know you by name, you're doing something wrong. If you've been going there for at least, 6-7 months.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about where do you buy your books? Are you doing the vast majority of that there from the Big To Do? Are you doing it on eBay? Are you picking up collections?
Right now, I've pared my collection down. It's more about quality than quantity. There's certain runs that I still like, my X-Men run, my Avengers run, that it's Silver and Bronze Age. Like I like collecting small runs too, like the Bronze Age Nova and Bronze Age Captain Marvel. I completed those. I completed the Iron Fist run of the Marvel Premiere. So Marvel Premiere number 15. Right?
You got it.
Marvel Premiere, and then all the way to Iron Fist into his solo run. So I like those little small runs, like 20, 30 books in the Bronze Age. Bronze Age is like my digging ground. That's where I think those are the books that are primed for success, because Copper, the run started getting larger, but in the Bronze Age, Marvel really started killing it with the first appearances and little goofy titles like Marvel Premiere, Marvel Feature, Marvel Spotlight, things of those where they were doing these little 4 or 5 issue runs, and those were, I think, prime digging grounds. And if and I think there's still lots of first appearances there that are relatively inexpensive that you can go out and get. Not everything has to be Silver Age first appearance or Golden Age, but that's where I typically go. And if I like to go my LCS whenever they have their sales 30% off, and I go there and every now and then I pop in to see what's on their wall. I don't typically, get filler issues anymore, because to be honest with you, I was running out of room. And so I made it a point where I can't be emotionally tied to everything that I own. So I would get rid of stuff to buy stuff. I would sell 10 comics to buy 1 comic. So that way I can get my collection smaller, and I can get my collection, I guess, more valuable, either financially or I want to not emotionally, but whatever nostalgia reasons, right? Like I love What If #1, because I told you that's one of the first book I ever saw as a kid. So to this day, I have 6 copies of What If #1. And just luckily, there's going to be a What If animated series, so that worked out pretty well. I mean, I have a bunch of first issues of Micronauts too.
I heard they're already planning a second series.
Oh yeah, and the animation, from what I've seen, looks incredible. So it's about time that Marvel kills it with the animation. Spending some proper money on it. But I'll go on eBay when something pops and you need to sign specific. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times your LCSs, they just won't have it. And you have to go on eBay to find something. And I like to go to shows too if I'm going to buy. But typically shows, I got to be really careful because the pricing is really expensive. But what I'll do as a show is I'll bring you in trade bait so that I can at least trade, offer cash to get like a bigger book. Because, you can go to a show and there'll be a bunch of 181s there, or Amazing Fantasy 15, FF1, X-Men 1. And then you could at least see it. If I'm going to make a big purchase, I feel more comfortable doing it in person, or if I buy it slabbed already off of eBay, right? I mean, buying something raw, like over a certain dollar amount on eBay, you get bit in the ass, man. Shit, I got bit in the ass buying a PGX slab on eBay. I bought a PGX first appearance of Hawkeye, and then I bought it and I posted an Instagram. Somebody goes, "Hey man, those edges look trimmed." Yeah, it was a PGX 5.5, and I was thinking, hey, I'm gonna get this first Hawkeye. I'm gonna crack this fucker. I'm gonna press it out. I'm gonna get it clean. It's gonna come back a higher grade because it's PGX. Man, it came back a 4.0, and it came back resto with the edges trimmed. I was like, oh man, that's brutal. So I don't ever mess with a PGX now. Lesson learned.
Yeah, oh God, it's brutal. Golden Age books, I'm okay buying slab Golden Age books online. I think a 3.5 is a 3.5 generally when it comes to like Golden Age CGC books, but particularly modern books, like a 9.8 is not always a 9.8. A 9.6 is not. Books take a real hard look in person. If it's one, to my PC, if it's a matter of me like trying to, make a run at a particular issue or something, and I'm buying, like maybe a handful of them.
Well, I mean, we've talked on our show numerous. Yeah, we have an episode on our channel called the Collector Series where we just talk about collecting, because a lot of times we think, oh, maybe as a first time viewer watching our channel, our first time to collecting, right? Because we always think, we cater to the seasoned collector. We throw around terms like GPA, CGC, or pre-orders, things like that, and we think, man, maybe the first time collectors is all going over their heads. So we talk about things that I've been collecting over 30 years. Otto's been collecting over 30 years. Justin's been collecting for a while. So we think we have a good enough experience to tell people. Because what I found, it was like other, I wouldn't say channels, but let's say other outlets who have been new to the game, who maybe been giving people information which we didn't agree with. But we won't go on our show and we tell you that don't listen to them. We'll tell you this is what we think. We're not telling anybody's wrong, but we're going to tell you what we think we should do. And a lot of times we tell people too, look, if you're looking for a 9.8 modern, go and buy a 9.8 modern as opposed to trying to get one graded. Because if you can find one for like $50-$60, buy it. Because you never know if you can get one graded and a modern comes back a 9.6. That's like the kiss of death, right? If you buy a book last month and you wanted a 9.8 and you send it out to CGC and it comes back a 9.6, man, that's almost a kiss of death. I mean, that's like now a $15 book as opposed to it could be a $200 book. So a lot of times I tell people, look, go buy a 9.8 if it's only $50-$60. Why? Because if you grade it and get it shipped to you, that's like $20-$30 just right there, right? I mean, a lot of times people they get caught up in chasing the 9.8. And they don't realize the money they're spending and buying all these copies just to get a 9.8 when they can just buy a 9.8, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, couldn't agree more. So what are some of the books that you are hot on today? What do you like here? It's December, it's buying season. Right. It doesn't have, we can talk modern, silver, gold. And I can give you some examples if it would help, because I know that's like an incredibly broad question in a hobby where there's 10 million choices. Well, for example, good girl art, PCH, a little bit of, like all the above. You look at Golden Age superhero books, or do you want to talk Silver Age, Copper, Bronze, Modern? You tell me.
I think Bronze Age Marvel is the prime hunting ground right now. Because it falls in that sweet spot of where it's not incredibly old to where you can get a good grade and potentially in the 9s for a key issue, right? And I also think that in the past, it was the big two that caused the majority of the price fluctuations, right? Marvel and DC. Whenever they made a movie, and that was the way to go. TV spec is very fickle. You need to be timed because a lot of times, you look at all the Flash villains that were hot at one point, totally faded away.
Sure.
So I always say the blue chippers are the long-term spec for Marvel and DC movies, right? Like the weekly spec of independent books. I don't really get too much into that because for every example you can give me, I give you an example of something else that's not happened, like God Country.
I was just talking to somebody earlier today that it's probably time to be buying Ghost Rider, Marvel Spotlight 5.
Oh,
right.
Yeah, but like if
no TV show
options, I do not. Yeah, options for Image or anything like that, I don't fuck with at all because I don't trust it. Because put it this way, if once you understand how Hollywood works, then there's probably 90 options at Hollywood right now that'll never be made into movies or TV show because Hollywood,
half of which have been announced to the public, half of which haven't.
Yeah, and partly because Hollywood has FOMO too. They want to buy the rights to that property so nobody else will. Doesn't necessarily. So Descenders, a good friend of mine is Dustin Wynn. Descender was a book that got optioned by Sony. Nothing's ever happened to it. Donna Cates was writing the script for God Country.
I purchased, right, en masse before I got out of comics.
Yeah. So I think what everybody's doing there is they're waiting for the next Walking Dead to pop, which is very, very dangerous. But I think Disney Plus has changed. I think is going to change the spec game for TV shows, right? In the past, if it's coming on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I don't know, maybe Robbie Reyes was hot for a little bit, then it went away. DC with CW shows hot, but then it goes away. Remember the Netflix stuff was hot and then it went away, but Disney Plus has the pockets of Disney and Marvel, as well as creative leadership of Kevin Feige, to where they announce She-Hulk, Moon Knight, all these titles, and they're popping now. I think Disney Plus may be the exception to the norm when it comes to TV show spec, because before we just assumed CW, it's going to tilt, it's going to fade away. Look what happened to Luke Cage. That book absolutely tanked after the show. Jessica Jones tanked. Goddamn Iron Fist was one of my favorite characters, and I absolutely hate the series. That book, at one point it was a really, really hot book. Marvel Premiere 15, first appearance of Iron Fist, absolutely went away. I've been buying up Shang-Chi for a couple of years now. I got 4 copies. I've been buying Nova #1. I got 4 copies of that.
Shang-Chi's are down, for the record.
Yeah. Oh well,
it's buying time for those books. I've been eyeing up I missed the 9.6 that went for nothing.
The day
it went for absolutely nothing.
The day it got announced, Shang-Chi. The day it got announced, I bought a 9.8 for $1,500.
Perfect.
The day it got announced, because I was like, you know what, it's not, and 9.8s, pretty hard to find. So, but that's when I always tell people, look, if you're gonna buy, you have to buy on news and then wait, then buy on trailer and then wait, and then buy right before the movie comes out, and that's it. Otherwise, because those are the hot times, right? If you think about it, after the movie comes out 6 months, boom, the kind of book kind of settles down and goes away. So you have to kind of know these cycles of when to buy. Buy when it gets first announced as the news, officially announced, and then buy on the first trailer. If you remember the first trailer for Far From Home, right? With the elementals, right? And everybody was going crazy over Molten Man and fucking Hydro Man and all that shit. And it ended up being, when the movie came out, it absolutely tanked that book because everybody realized they were just holograms. They weren't the actual Molten Man and Hydro Man, right? It was just part of that whole thing. Probably the same thing with Mysterio too, right? Once they found out he may be back, I always tell people to be careful when you spec on villains, because a lot of times they can be one and done. Obviously, Thanos's are the exception sometimes, right? You have I guess your big villains that'll always be hot. Doctor Doom, Thanos, Galactus, characters like that. But then you have to be careful for like the one and dones where you get a Mysterio or you get the Vulture. Well, not Vulture. Let's say Rogues Galleries for Spider-Man and Batman don't count because they've been in the lore for a long time. But then, like, remember Whiplash for Iron Man 2, right? Is anybody looking for a Whiplash, the first appearance of Whiplash now? And it's like, you got to be, that's why sometimes it gets kind of exhausting because you have to be very well timed if you want to flip things. It's not bad to be a flipper or a speculator. It's just like stocks, right? If you hold on to it too long, you've missed your window of opportunity. If you want to flip and try to flip a book to buy another book that you want, it's all about timing, just like stocks. If I hold on to a stock and it just levels out and starts going down, well, I'm selling it now. I've not made as much money, or I've lost money on my investment. You guys, comicbookspeculation.com, and you guys know that better than anybody, right?
Well, I do pretty good. Your suggestion is
if you know how to read the tea leaves, if you know how to read the tea leaves, then you'll be okay.
Yeah, your suggestion is the buy on news, sell on first trailer, right? Sell on release, or
if it depends on what you are. If you already have it in hand, right? If you already have it in hand, then you can sell on first news. If you are privy to news, buy it before everybody else is privy on the news, right? On eBay, because like when Shang-Chi was announced, not a lot of people knew about it.
Or Blade, right? All these books.
I would say
I tried to get my buddy to buy first appearance of Blade for $5,000 about a year ago, and he didn't, and he still hates me.
And the best eBay ones are? The best eBay buys are the buy it nows that have been sitting there for like months and months and months.
Absolutely.
When news pops, because I've heard horror stories too, though, where people are like, "Hey, sorry, I can't give it to you because movie news is dropping." Like, well,
oh no, I get more canceled purchases, I think, per but nuts. I like it's to the point now where I just like taking it as a hazard of the industry. It drives me crazy.
Comic book shops that do that shit too. That's just unethical. You know what I'm saying? It's like there are some cats on Instagram who posted a picture of the shop and had a disclaimer on the book. They go, prices subject to change if movie news drops. I'm like, what? That's bullshit. It's been sitting there this entire time. That's why I walked into a shop one time, and it was a pretty big shop. It's down here in Fountain Valley, which is famously enough, it's famous for the store owner getting hit in the head with a brick. And it was, he got robbed. It was kind of weird like that. So I went in there, and it's huge. It's this huge place. And I started digging through the long boxes. I know there's no prices on these. Oh, that's weird. So I grabbed the stack and I said, "Hey, how much are these?" He goes, "Hold on, let me look them up." I go, "Oh, hell no." I said, "Where are you looking?" He goes, "eBay." I go, "I'm out. See ya." I was like, because I was like, "What are you going to?" I'm seeing how much they sell, how much they're selling it for. I was like, "No, you need, first of all, there's an art to doing that. You need to look at completed sales, not how much things people are asking for." So as soon as he told me that, I walked out. I was like, "I'm not buying from you. Either price your shit correctly, or don't price it when I get up to the register." At that point, he lost me as a customer. I never came back to the shop.
Yeah, you want to hear a good one? I once was banned from a comic shop where I took a stack of books up, completed the sale, right? The whole thing. And then I went back and I'm like, I paid you precisely the amount of money that you wanted, but they were mad because I was just like astonished at this idea of like, oh, come on, dude. You mean I have to sit here for an hour while you price these books? Is this real life?
There's been some backlash. I know some cats on YouTube. I remember my buddy, there's some collectors in Hawaii, and they were talking about a shop that says when they came in, the shop owner would belittle them or besmirch them because they would buy multiple copies of shit. And then they started saying, he's a flipper, and they don't realize that, wait a second, what we're doing is actually, we are helping spread the community. You know what I mean? Us buying back issues at your store.
Hell yeah.
If I buy for 10 and sell it for 30, that's on me. I did the legwork. You just bought the book and you let it sit there for a year or 2 years before somebody bought
I
them.
mean, dude, I set up at shows. I love it when people like want to buy multiple copies. They whip out the key collector app. Then I'm in heaven. I'm like, buy all the keys. Buy all of them. Every single one. I've got them all. I have them all.
Keys are keys, though.
You know, my buddy
my
trademarked, I've got your keys. It's not Nick. It's another buddy I have. And I always thought that was like the greatest like trademark ever for a comic guy.
My LCS owner told me, he goes, when somebody comes in and they start buying random back issues, he'll, okay. And then after they leave, he'll look them up and he goes, oh, so that's why he bought those. Good for him. He doesn't, sit there and, but a good LCS, when they hear news drop, they'll go through and look through their back issues and they'll price them accordingly. Right. As opposed to once they get up there, as the digger, if you find something that your LCS doesn't know about it, you should be rewarded. I mean, that's what we do, right? We kind of get a high off of that. That's like us digging and digging and say, oh man, look at this. I got this for it. Right.
I let Sleepy John rob me whenever I set up at a show with him. Sleepy, the guy I do my podcast with, he'll fucking come through and take all my books that I should have repriced. It's just like, well, thanks, Sleepy. Fucking prick. But yeah. It's just part of the trade.
I mean, it's even bigger now since there's so much, just Marvel itself with the MCU, with Disney Plus, all the stuff coming. It's just so much. I mean, you can either write it down on a piece of paper, or what I like to do is social media, because I think I'm more visually, I have a better memory. If I have a better memorization of a cover than I do of a number, right?
You and me both.
If somebody tells me, yeah, if I see, that's why I'm, you got to be active on Instagram or Facebook. If you see this, the same covers posted over and over again, somebody tags you and they go, hey, look at this hot, especially modern variants, which I'm really bad at, because there's just every week they're just now with online variants of Unknown Comics, Frankie Comics, Karis Comics, there's so many artists. It's hard to keep up, but when somebody tags you, you're like, that's why, just like right now, the hot comic is the, I can't even tell you what number. I think it's Doctor Strange 11. I can tell you what the cover looks like. It's Doctor Strange,
the pink one
with Scarlet Witch. It's a red cover. Yeah. And it's the 1 in 50.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, that one's hot now because Scarlet Witch and Doctor Strange are both exactly the Adam Hughes book. And I can't even tell you what the damn number is, but I can tell you exactly what it looks. You know what I mean? I know it's a 1 in 50. I know who the artist is. I don't know what the number is, but I know what it looks like. So whenever I see it, boom, so you have to have some type of memorization for stuff.
Yeah. So what kind of stuff, if you hit a local comic shop or, a convention, where do you go first? For me, I like magazines. At least the magazine size boxes, because that for me is where the weird stuff is about, where I can potentially pull treasure out of there, where someone else hasn't valued it as much as I do. Find something weird, is that kind of your strategy? Do you go to like the kids books, or do you just straight up hit Marvel DC boxes?
Yeah, depending on the size of the show, typically I will do a lap through all the comic book vendors first. So then I know who to go back to, right? Because this way I can get an idea of who's pricing at what, who's got 50% bins, things of that nature. And I know if it's a medium-sized con, you can knock that out in 2 hours. Go through, like WonderCon. It's good to have a con where they put all the comic book vendors kind of generally in the same location. And then, you go in there and you kind of see what their prices are, and you can immediately say, and if I have a good enough rapport with them, I'm like, hey man, put these aside. I'll be right back. If you can, like, if they don't know you, they may not put it hold you. Just tell them your name, shake their hand, introduce yourself, say, hey, I'm really interested, but I just got here. Let me walk around the floor and I'll come back and I'll get these. And I've done that a few times. So this way, in case there is something. And then if you find something at a cheaper price, you're not stuck to that. Because, a lot of times, or I'll go on a Sunday, because I think on a Sunday, I think you can get a better deal, because a lot of times the vendors don't want to carry all the shit back with them, right? Slabs, boxes full of comics. Look, they're like, look, man, just make me a deal on Sunday. But I think if you make that same offer on Friday, they'll be like, hey, I still got 2 days ago. Let me see if I can sell it for that. But right at Sunday, right around closing, you may be able to haggle and make some good deals on a guy who's not willing to carry all the boxes back to his car, per se. I mean, you sold at booths, right? I mean, did you want to carry everything back?
Absolutely not. Yeah. End of the show's the time to move. And it's also the time to buy big books. Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, a lot of people don't.
Huge
you
deals.
probably know this. Yeah, you probably know this better than most. And I know this because I know a lot of dealers, but most shows begin the day before the show opens or as they're setting up. It goes from dealer to dealer, man. There's so many transactions going from dealer to dealer. You'd be shocked at how much.
In my area, it pays to buy retailer space just so that you can go shop early. And like, I have friends that when they set up at shows, I know that there's going to be next to nothing left by the time I get there.
So that's a good show. A lot of times.
Yeah, my area is so good for comics, like Southeastern Ohio, Southwestern Pennsylvania, are so comic rich. But we just have like, I don't know, a half a dozen to 24 guys that are just beasts. And like if I see one of them at a table, I go another direction because I know there's nothing left.
Yeah.
Like whether it's on the wall or in the boxes, they've taken it all.
In California, man, everybody is got pockets. You know what I mean? And everybody's buying big boy books. It's like, man, you better. That's why sometimes you just got to get in there and do it because everybody knows what they want to get. There's a show called California Comic-Con, and it's the smallest, biggest show in probably in the country. I mean, we're talking literally the size of a 7-Eleven, but they'll have 15 Amazing Fantasy 15s in there. It's basically a show where a lot of dealers. So last time I was there last year, the owner of Torpedo Comics was there, the drummer for System of a Down. Rob Liefeld was there buying original art. So it's just major players in the comic book industry, and dealers are dealing back and forth with each other. It's so big that it's only a one-day show, but the night before they have a special show where guys just trade with each other. This year it's going to be at Costa Mesa, but every year, typically for the last like 4 or 5 years, it's been in Yorba Linda. But it's a huge show. I mean, you just see like Golden Age slabs all over the place. It's just absolutely huge. Like last year, the big thing was everybody was buying first appearance of Aquaman, right? It was just like they were just handing them out like candy. They're all over the place. I mean, and the prices were typically good, but what's the guy's name? Pete Cabanero.
Oh,
you know him?
Yeah,
big on the East Coast, right?
Yeah.
He sets up a booth there, and this is in California. He sets up a booth there he has about 15 grand in cash just buying books off people. I always recognize him because he always has like a goofy, like some weird hat on or something like that. And he wears like a weird suit. He almost looks like he's homeless half the times, but he's out there buying big. I mean, he ripped off my buddy, actually. I mean, when I say ripped off, he like gave him like 30% retail, less than retail for a slab, and I told my buddy, I said, don't do it. I said, oh, you did it. Yeah. You just got taken advantage of by Pete. Tell you, it's a small world, man. It's like literally 1 degree of separation between probably from East Coast to West Coast collectors and comics, especially even now more with social media. And
you told me a cool story about a couple guys that were at your local comic shop. Will you share that with the listening audience?
Sure. So my comic shop is Comic Tunes and Toys in Tustin, California. It's been around since the late 80s. And I've met Kareem Abdul-Jabbar there. I met artists have always done signings there. So one day I'm talking up on my LCS owner, and it's a Wednesday. It's packed in there, right? So it's right around like 1, 2 o'clock. This is when I used to work from home. I used to be able to go to my LCS on Wednesday, boom, in and out. And so I'm in there. And as I'm walking out the door, I definitely see Rob Liefeld. And then I see another guy behind him. I go, who the fuck is that? That looks so familiar. And then my LCS owner, my big to-do says, hey, man, I get a text like I'm inside my car. And he goes, hey, Rob Liefeld and Robert Kirkman were just here. They're looking for books. I'm like, God damn it. And he goes, and this is when, I was still doing our YouTube show. And he's like, yeah, he goes, Kirkman or Liefeld always come in. You should get him on your show. And then it was like, we were just talking about it. And he goes, well, come back, maybe get him on the show. I was like, man, I'm already in my car. I don't want to see like a stand and shit, because I didn't really care about Rob Liefeld, but this is when Robert Kirkman was super hot with the Walking Dead and Invincible and everything. So I was like, I wanted to talk to Robert Kirkman. It's funny is I got him to do one of my friends at MegaCon or somewhere got him to do an introduction for our show. Like, my kind of little stupid little logo or catchphrase, if you say, is keep digging in them long boxes. So my buddy was doing at a show and he got Robert Kirkman to say, hey, keep digging in those long boxes. So I still have it on my YouTube. Yeah. I got him and I got DMC to say it from Run DMC at a show. I got him.
I love DMC.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
DMC is a huge comic nerd. Yeah. He does a lot of the con circuit now because he had his book he was publishing, but I mean, he's been a comic fan for a huge long time, man.
That's amazing. Well, we have reached the hour mark. I promise I'd only keep you hostage for an hour, but I would like to give you a couple minutes to talk about anything that you want to, and for today, it's been a lot of fun. I am a fan of your show. I can't say that I necessarily buy like every single book that you guys talk about, but I value your insights. I mean, I really respect what you guys do. I believe that other than our show, you were the only other show that genuinely always talks about GPA, that doesn't fucking make up nonsense, but really does a good job sourcing and, provides full disclosure. This is what we heard. Doesn't suggest that people run out and buy these books, but just provides information in an effort to try to help people make informed decisions about the books they want to buy so they can make money to try to keep this hobby healthy. And for me, it doesn't get any better than that.
No, I appreciate it, man. And thanks for taking it easy with me on the softball questions. I mean, to be honest with you, I can literally just talk comics for like hours at a time. You know what I mean? It's like we're just talking stuff that we love and it comes second nature. Like, we didn't have any forum questions. You didn't tell me what we're going to talk about. It's just two guys hanging out at the LCS on Wednesday at a show where you just talk comics. But yeah, no, I mean, what we do is when we get the news, we try to parse the news and then we find as much data as we can and gather and tell you about it. So, and we do use GPA and we don't tell you what the GPA of a raw book is. No, we'll tell you this is the graded copy. This is what they last sold for. This is what the trend we're seeing over the last 90 days. This, buy it or sell it is up to you, but use this information when you're going out and, we kind of in a lucky position now, and Pops Foster and Matt Forge and Discovery Bay, some of the guys in the live chat can attest to it, that once we got some insider information, we're able to give our viewers kind of a leg up on other collectors where we're not speculating. We're actually getting this news from insiders. Now, we tell people also things are subject to change, right? I mean, things happen, like, somebody's schedule gets busy or Kevin Feige makes a move on the board or something like that. So we're telling, hey, man, always, as always, I mean, sometimes we'll say, this is the book to get, but it's already a $2,000 book. So be careful. Maybe get the second appearance.
Story of my life.
When when we do it, we don't just randomly say, oh, it's been talked about this, that, and the other. We will say, this is why they're going to do it. This is what we're hearing. And this is when they're going to do it and how they're going to do it. Like what we just talked about, Clea is being developed for Disney Plus because Marvel Studios wants to use her as a female Doctor Strange. And this is a perfect introduction. Brother Voodoo will be a guest on there. And this goes full circle because Brother Voodoo will be based in New Orleans. Who else is in New Orleans? Cloak and Dagger. So Cloak and Dagger has gone full screen now to where they're rebooted into the MCU, part of Disney Plus, as guests on the Brother Voodoo show, who's going to be spun out from Clea. So, I mean, if you and I both obviously know, everybody's been specking Brother Voodoo for what? Ever since Doctor Strange 1, right? If you've been smart, when a movie gets made, you just start buying all the ancillary characters part of it, right? If you buy Doctor Strange 1, you got to get Clea, Dormammu, Brother Voodoo, Wong, whomever, all these side characters, because they're going to eventually be in the movie. So Brother Voodoo has been a book that I've been really trying to, and sure enough, now it's like the perfect, now you better get it or else. And what I don't like is when people go, well, thanks to you, the prices have been, no, it's not thanks to me. We told you about it, months and months ago. If you didn't buy it then you have nobody to blame but yourself because now the prices have gone up. If anything, it's when the Hollywood Reporter or Collider or one of these other sites to say it, you know, because they're reputable. You know what I mean? But when we say it, we're just a bunch of wahoos just talking about it, you know, on comicbookspeculation.com or on Lords of
Yeah, no one
Longbox. You
cares.
know, if we talk about it, yeah. So, but that's good for us though, because then the people who
Absolutely.
watch, viewers on your website, viewers of our show, are saying, hey, you know what? I heard them talking about this the other day, right? I mean, back in July, we talked about Frankie Ray being the first appearance of Frankie Ray as Nova, FF244. That book is blowing up now. And and what's cool to me is I have friends that will tag me on a picture. Hey man, I just picked up 3 of these for $1. I'm like, cool, awesome. You kicked ass, right? But we try not to toot our own horns too much because I think that gives a backlash. There was a weird little backlash that happened, like, I don't know, a year ago about speculators and flippers or what, I don't know, whatever their trip is, but I never really dawned on me. To me, it just seemed normal. It's the normal progression of comic collecting is, you know, for every other comic there is, if it's based off movie and TV news, either you hate it or you don't. That's what the market reacts to. And that's what really moves units, especially for back issues. So if I tell you people, if you don't want to miss out on anything, buy everything that comes out. You know what I mean? So, but like for me, it's like in the Bronze Age, just buy up all the first appearances. $50-$60. It's a great thing to have in your personal collection. If it ever gets made into a movie, you just made yourself some nice coin right there, right? But thanks for having me on, bro. Every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific, we go live for about a good hour. We just talk about stuff going on. I still do comic calls every now and then. They get kind of far and in between now, and every now and then we'll do a movie review. But outside of that, it's just, I think we'll probably take the rest of the holidays off. So, let the guys rest and recharge. And then January will come full bore, man.
9 p.m. We hope that you join our friends from the Lords of the Longbox on their YouTube channel. TiVo, my friend, it was a joy. Thank you.